147 million people. That's about 1 in 3 Americans, and it's the number of human beings whose social security numbers walked out the door of a single company in 2017. There was no zero day. There was no unstoppable new weapon. The strangest part is what actually caused it. The patch already existed. The fix had been public for months, and a scanner had almost certainly seen the flaw and flagged it. So here's the loop I want you holding the whole video. There's one gap, one step in a 5-step cycle that decides whether a finding on a screen ever becomes a headline.
Hey everyone, Michael here, and that gap is the whole exam objective in disguise. The technology to find this thing was sitting right there doing its job. The breach happened in the empty space between finding it and fixing it. That space has a name, and Security Plus 4.3 is basically the study of it.
Nora jumping in, and let me put the Equifax clock on the table because the dates are the lesson. Apache shipped the patch for that Struts flaw on the 7th of March. Attackers were inside the company by roughly the 10th. That's a 3-day head start Equifax handed away for free.
3 days. The fix was already sitting on a public server while the door stood wide open.
And then it gets worse because the intrusion ran quietly until the 29th of July before anyone noticed. So this wasn't one missed deadline. It was a window that stayed open for months while the data drained out the back. The clock was the attacker's best friend the entire time.
I'm Nova, and here's the pattern underneath all of it. Vulnerability management isn't an event, it's a loop with 5 moves. You scan to find, you analyze to score and rank, you respond to fix, you validate to prove the fix took, and you report so it doesn't happen in the dark. Skip any one link and you get Equifax.
That loop is the spine of this whole topic, so let me be clear about one thing first. We already spent a whole episode on the vulnerability types, the 0 days and the misconfigurations, and another one on attack surfaces. Today is not the what. Today is the how, the actual process that hunts every one of those down and closes it.
And picture who's actually running that process. It isn't a magic box in a closet. It's a team on watch, staring at findings, deciding what to chase first. Vulnerability management is a shift, not a button.
Here's the whole cycle, and seeing it as a wheel is what makes it stick. You scan, then you analyze, then you respond, then you validate, then you report, and reporting feeds right back into the next scan. It never truly ends, and that's exactly why the exam loves testing it.
And notice the weak link, because it's the same one every time. Everybody loves the scan, it feels like progress. Almost nobody finishes the loop. The finding gets found, and then it just sits, unranked, unfixed, unproven. That quiet sitting is where the whole disaster lives.
One quick thing before we open a terminal, because it belongs right here. We host the free Security Plus practice quizzes and study notes at certs.professorerica.com. So once this clicks, go drill Objective 4.3 there until it's automatic. Now, our team has been collecting the one question viewers keep typing under every video like this.
And it's honest to the point of painful. People write, if the scanner already found the vulnerability, then how on earth do real companies still get breached by it? That's the exact gap we're here to close, step by step.
So let's earn the answer. Step 1 of the loop is the scan, and we're not going to lecture you from a slide. Michael's going to run a real one against a lab host and find the exact family of flaw that took Equifax down. But the step that actually decides whether you get breached is still 3 moves down this loop. So stay with us for the number that lies and the fix that finally proves itself.
Step 1 is the scan, and its job is simple to say and deep to do. Enumerate everything running on a target, then check each one against a giant database of known flaws. A scanner is really a librarian with a very grim card catalog, matching what you're running against everything the world has already learned to break.
And there's a step 0 people forget, which is that you cannot scan what you don't know you own. So the real first move is asset discovery, building an inventory of every host. The server nobody remembers is exactly the one that stays unpatched. That forgotten box in the corner is the Equifax box.
This is a real lab host I control, an isolated machine set up exactly for this, never a system you don't own. Watch what a scan actually looks like when it's running. It scrolls, it's alive. And that motion matters because a scan isn't one question, it's thousands, fired in sequence, each one asking the box a different "does this flaw live here?"
Before the terminal really opens, the exam wants you to know there's more than one kind of scan, because the type changes what you can even see. Walk us through the menu, Nova, because this is where they trip people up on test day.
Start with the big one. A credentialed scan logs in with a real account, so it reads the actual patch levels and configuration from the inside, the way an administrator would. An uncredentialed scan only sees what a stranger sees from outside, the open ports and the banners. Credentialed finds far, far more, and that gap is a favorite exam distinction.
Picture that credentialed scan as this analyst, logged in, reading the system from inside instead of rattling the doorknob from the street. That's why it catches the missing patch an outsider never would.
Then there's where the scanner lives. Agent-based means you install a small program on each host that reports in continuously. Agentless reaches across the network from a central scanner instead. Agents give deeper, always-on coverage. Agentless is lighter to run. The exam just wants the trade-off between coverage and overhead.
And there's one more pairing they slip in that has real consequences. A non-intrusive scan only observes. It looks, it fingerprints, it never actually touches the flaw. An intrusive scan pokes the vulnerability to confirm it's real, which is more accurate but can knock a fragile system straight over.
Which is why you never fire an intrusive scan at production at noon.
Right, you schedule it for a maintenance window, or you test against a copy first, because the scan itself can be the outage. Choosing the wrong type at the wrong time is its own incident, and the exam will absolutely hand you a scenario where the safe answer is the non-intrusive one against a fragile production system.
And scanning code splits into two camps the exam loves to set side by side. Nova, give people the version they'll actually remember.
Static analysis, spelled SAST, reads the source code without running it, like proofreading a recipe for mistakes. Dynamic analysis, DAST, attacks the application while it's running, like actually cooking the dish to see if it catches fire. One reads the plan, the other tests the reality, and mature teams do both.
And there's one scan type that is the entire Equifax story turned into a control: package monitoring. It watches your software bill of materials, your actual list of components and libraries, and it screams the second one of them, like Struts, gets a fresh vulnerability. That's the alarm Equifax needed on day one, and never wired up.
Now the part nobody shows you. Let me fingerprint this lab box, then ask the scanner to run its vulnerability scripts and tell us what's actually exploitable. Watch the screen. First the service scan, to learn what's even listening, then the vuln scripts, and look at what comes back.
So the scanner did its whole job. It found the flaw, it named the exact identifier, and it told us it's exploitable. The machine has done everything a machine can do. And this, right here, is the moment the Equifax story actually begins, because finding it turns out to be the easy part.
Exactly. The scan only reports, it never fixes. A finding is the start of the work, not the end of it, and the whole rest of this loop is about what you do with that one line of output before an attacker does it for you.
Before we keep going, one small favor that actually moves the needle. If this is landing for you, tap like, then subscribe and turn on the bell so you do not miss the rest. 2 taps, completely free, and it pushes this in front of more people who need it.
The scan handed us one flaw. A real network hands you thousands at once, and you cannot fix them all today. So now you score it, because you need a number that tells you which fire to put out first. And the exam absolutely loves to blur the name of the flaw with the score of the flaw.
So keep them separate, because it's 2 acronyms doing 2 totally different jobs. CVE is the name. It's a unique identifier so the entire world can point at the same flaw, like a license plate. CVSS is the score, a number from 0 to 10 for how severe that flaw is. 1 identifies, 1 rates.
And they don't even have the same owner, which trips people up. Who assigns which one?
Good catch. The CVE identifier is assigned by an authority under the CVE program, which is run by MITRE. Then the National Vulnerability Database, the NVD, run by NIST, enriches that record with the score and the affected products. MITRE names it, NIST scores it and catalogs it.
And 2 more acronyms ride along that the exam quietly expects. CWE is the weakness class, the family of mistake behind the flaw, like improper input validation. CPE is the naming scheme that pins down exactly which product and version is affected. So think of it this way. CWE is the type of crime, CVE is the specific case, and CPE is the address where it happened. Let me pull the real record up, because you can do this yourself tonight, for free, and it's the exact muscle a working analyst uses every day. This is the live NVD page for the Struts flaw our scanner just found. Look right at the metrics block. There it is, in black and white from NIST. Base score 9.8, marked critical. And next to it that vector string, which looks like alphabet soup but is really just the math spelled out in shorthand.
Read the front half of that vector with me. Attack vector network, attack complexity low, privileges required none, user interaction none. In plain English, that means reachable from anywhere on the internet, easy to pull off, no login and no clicking required. There's no lucky victim who has to open an attachment. The attacker just reaches out and takes it.
And the back half is the impact, the damage if it lands. Here all 3 are maxed: confidentiality high, integrity high, availability high. The attacker can read your data, change your data, and take the system down. Easy to reach plus total damage is exactly the recipe for a 9.8. Picture what that actually means on the far end.
And the severity bands are worth memorizing exactly because the wording shows up on the test. Low runs from 0.1 to 3.9. Medium is 4 to 6.9. High is 7 to 8.9. Critical is 9 to 10, and a flat 0 means none. The trap they set is mixing up high and critical, so anchor 2 numbers in your head. The 7, where high begins. The 9, where critical begins. Get those 2 boundaries right, and the whole scale falls into place around them.
But here's the second order point most people miss completely. That base score is deliberately generic. In version 4 of CVSS, there are 4 metric groups: base, threat, environmental, and supplemental. Base captures the flaw itself. The others adjust it for the real world, and only base is actually required to produce a score.
And that distinction is not academic. It's the whole difference between a checklist auditor and a real defender. Nova, give me the version anyone can feel.
The exact same 9.8 is a 5-alarm fire on your internet-facing payment server, and a shrug on a disconnected lab box with nothing on it. The environmental group lets you raise or lower the score for your own network. The base score starts the conversation. Your environment finishes it.
And quick honesty, because the exam is mid-transition. You'll still see version 3.1 scores everywhere in the wild, including on that NIST page, while version 4 is the newer standard. The good news is the band cutoffs are identical across both, so the 7 and the 9 never move under you.
Which sets up the question our panel kept circling while we prepped this. If a vulnerability scores a perfect 10, does that automatically make it the single most urgent thing to fix on my entire network this week? Yes or no?
Hold that one, because the answer is no, and it's the whole reason the next step of the loop even exists. Severity is not the same as urgency, and closing that gap is where a real program earns its keep.
So a scanner hands you a pile of findings, and not all of them are even real. This is the analysis step, and it lives or dies on 2 phrases the exam will absolutely test. false positive, and false negative. People swap them under pressure every time.
So make them impossible to swap, because one of these is genuinely dangerous and the other is just annoying. Draw the contrast for us.
Picture the boy who cried wolf. A false positive is the scanner shouting wolf when there's no wolf. A false negative is the opposite, the wolf strolling right in while the scanner stays completely silent. And the silent one is the killer, because you cannot respond to an alarm that never fired.
And the asymmetry is the whole point. A false positive costs you an hour chasing a ghost. A false negative costs you Equifax. So a mature program never trusts one scanner alone, which is why we layer outside intelligence on top of it.
The outside intelligence has a vocabulary the exam wants: threat feeds, open source intelligence, the public stuff, advisories and security blogs, dark web monitoring, watching criminal forums for chatter about your industry, and information sharing centers where a whole sector pools its data so one bank's attack becomes every bank's early warning. Those feeds often arrive in standardized formats so tools can ingest them automatically, and they turn a lonely scanner into a scanner that knows what the rest of the world is already seeing.
And the single most useful feed for ranking is one anyone can open right now for free. Let me show you the real page, because this is the one that should drive your patch order more than any raw score. This is the CISA Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog. Every entry on this list isn't theoretical. It's being actively exploited in the real world right now, and under a federal directive, government agencies are ordered to patch these by a hard deadline. If your finding is on this list, it jumps the entire queue.
And that connects straight back to the question we left hanging. A 7 on this list beats a 10 that nobody is exploiting, because this proves the exploit is real and in use today. Severity told you how bad it could be in theory. This tells you it's actually happening.
And the exam ties this to the risk math from Domain 5. Each finding carries an exposure factor, the percentage of an asset you'd lose if it were exploited. A high exposure factor on a flaw that's on the exploited list is the textbook drop everything signal. Stack exploitation, severity, and exposure, and a 4,000 finding pile sorts itself. But scanners and feeds still have blind spots. And this is where humans earn their keep. Penetration testing is an authorized attack on your own systems to find what automated tools cannot. A scanner reports a flaw might exist. A pen tester proves a real human can actually walk through it. And a bug bounty scales that to the whole internet, paying outside researchers, programs that have paid out tens of millions of dollars, to report flaws instead of selling them.
Now this is exactly the point where I want someone who lives inside a real triage queue, not just one clean lab finding. Let me get a specialist on the line who knows this field cold.
Happy to jump in. On one host, this is just a checklist. In a real queue, the enemy is volume, 4,000 findings on a Monday, and the whole skill is deciding what to ignore safely, not what to fix.
So in plain terms, when everything is technically important, what actually decides your order?
Exploitation first, every time. A 7 that's being used against people today outranks a 10 nobody's touching, so the known exploited list comes before the raw score. Then it's what the box actually is, because a critical on the public payment server and a critical on a lab printer are not the same emergency.
Hold on, doesn't that let a quiet critical rot for months?
Fair push, so you time box it. The exploited stuff gets patched now, and the quiet critical gets a firm deadline plus a compensating control until then, never sitting with nobody's name on it. And the piece people underrate is the audit, which proves the whole process ran, not just that one box.
That audit point is the one people sleep on. An internal audit is your own team checking themselves. An external or independent one brings in outsiders for objectivity, and a regulatory audit is forced on you by law. The more independent the auditor, the more weight the result carries.
So the whole through line of analysis is one word: validate. Before you burn a weekend on a false positive, confirm it's real. And before you wave a finding off as noise, make absolutely sure it isn't the silent wolf, which lands us on the only step that actually protects anyone: the response. We found it, we scored it, we ranked it. Now comes the only step that actually protects anyone, the response. And this is where a real security team genuinely splits. So let me set the stakes cleanly. You are a brand new security lead, it's your first Monday, and the scanner just dropped 4,000 findings on your desk. Michael thinks the answer is obvious. Nora thinks obvious is exactly the trap. Michael, open us up.
My instinct is direct. Patching is the gold standard remediation, full stop, and every other option is a consolation prize. So you build a relentless patch pipeline and drive that number of open findings towards zero. A patched flaw is a dead flaw. Anything less is leaving a door unlocked and just hoping nobody tries the handle.
And that's exactly how a new lead burns out in a month while patching the wrong things first. You cannot patch 4,000 findings on Monday, Michael. While you're dutifully fixing a medium on an internal print server, the high on your public web app, the one that's on the exploited list, is being used against you as you type.
Hold on, that's sequencing, not a different answer. I still patch all of it.
Yes, and the sequence is the entire job. You prioritize by exploitability first, then a high score adjusted for your environment, then exposure. You patch what attackers can actually reach and are actually using today, and the rest follows on a schedule. Triage isn't a delay. It's the discipline that keeps you from drowning.
Michael, before you fire back, let me sharpen Nora's point with the trap I've watched sink a real team. A new analyst panics at 4,000 findings and starts knocking out the easiest 500 lows because the number drops fast and it feels productive. Meanwhile, the one critical that mattered sits untouched. Is that dropping number a win or a trap?
It's a trap, and that's the concession Nora earns from me. A burn-down chart going down feels like progress, but if you cleared 400 trivial findings and left the internet-facing remote code flaw wide open, you did negative work. You spent real hours making yourself less safe and more confident. That's the worst combination in this whole field.
Good. Now let me push both of you because the exam has a specific list of responses and patching is only one of them. Nora, what happens when you simply cannot patch? The system is a 20-year-old medical device the vendor abandoned. Now what?
Then patching is off the table and the other responses earn their place. You segment it, wall it off on its own network so a compromise can't spread. Or you add a compensating control, a firewall rule, or extra monitoring that lowers the risk without touching the flaw itself. The vulnerability stays put, but the path an attacker would use to reach it gets closed off.
I'll give her that one, and it's not small. Segmentation and compensating controls are real, named responses, not excuses. And there are two more on the list. Transfer usually means buying cyber insurance, so someone else absorbs the financial hit if it goes wrong. And the last one, accept, is the one that quietly causes the most damage.
So define accept precisely, because formally accepting a risk is not the same as just ignoring a finding.
Exactly. This is the documented exception, sometimes called an exemption. Accepting risk means a named decision maker signs off, in writing, that the cost to fix genuinely exceeds the risk, and the business will live with it for now. The danger is the silent version, where a finding just rots in a backlog with nobody owning it. Equifax was, in effect, an unsigned, unspoken acceptance.
That lands hard because no human ever actually chose to accept that Struts risk. It just fell through the cracks. So I'm softening my opening line. Patch first is still the right default, but a real program patches what matters first and consciously manages the rest with the other 4 responses.
And I'll meet you there, honestly. When you genuinely can patch fast, patch. I'm not anti-patch. I'm anti-patch blindly. The fight was never patch versus don't. It was patch everything at once versus patch what's on fire first.
So here's where we land, and it's the answer CompTIA rewards and the one that keeps people employed. Patching is the preferred remediation when you can do it, but the real skill is prioritization, and you drive that order with exploitability and the exploited list, not raw severity alone. When you genuinely cannot patch, you segment, compensate, transfer, or formally accept with a signature. The one option that is never on the list is silence. A finding nobody owns is exactly how a Struts flaw becomes 147 million records.
So we landed the verdict on how to respond. But there's one final step that closes the entire loop, and it's the exact step Equifax never reached. After you patch, you rescan to validate. You do not get to believe the fix worked. You have to prove it.
And remediation is genuinely hands-on. Somebody opens the box, applies the fix, restarts the service, and prays nothing else breaks. Picture the real work behind that one small word, patch. It's rarely one click. It's testing the update, scheduling downtime, and touching a system real people depend on.
Right, but doing the work and proving the work are two very different things. You rescan the same host with the same check right after the patch is applied, and you confirm the finding is actually gone. Not similar to gone, not probably gone, actually verifiably gone. Anything short of that is guessing, and guessing is exactly how a fix quietly fails in the dark.
Because a patch you never verified is only a hope, not a fix. So let me apply it and run that final proof, the single most satisfying command in all of vulnerability management. Same host, same vuln script, this time after the upgrade. Watch the result flip from vulnerable to clean.
And there it is, on the same kind of clock that doomed Equifax, except this time somebody actually reached the finish line.
Not vulnerable. That single line is the whole difference between a closed ticket and a wish, and only now do you actually close it. At scale, an audit does the same thing for your entire fleet, reconfirming every finding really did reach this exact point.
And there's a final step people forget because it isn't technical. Reporting. You take that pile of raw findings and turn it into a trend a leader can act on. How many criticals are open? How fast we close them? Are we getting better or worse? Without the report, all that work is invisible, and invisible work is the first thing a budget cuts.
And a good report is how the person who cannot read a vector string still understands the risk. It's the bridge from the terminal to the boardroom, and it's genuinely half the job in a mature program. The analyst who can find a flaw is common. The one who can make a leader care about it, on one slide, with one trend line, is the one who gets promoted.
And here's the part that makes it a loop and not a line. The moment you finish, you're not done. Hundreds of new CVE records get published every week, so the clean scan you ran today is already a little stale by tomorrow morning.
Which is why mature programs scan continuously, or at least on a tight recurring schedule, instead of once a quarter. The threat landscape does not wait for your calendar, and neither should you. That constant, closed loop is the whole point.
So the scanner found it, we scored it, we ranked it against what's really being hit, we responded, we proved it, and we reported it. That's the complete loop, and every link of it already existed back in 2017.
Which is the whole reason Equifax is the textbook case, not a freak accident. So here's the one rule that covers all of it. A vulnerability you found but never drove all the way to that final not vulnerable line is a vulnerability you still have. Finding it was never the hard part. Finishing the loop is. Let's bring it home. Vulnerability management is a loop, not a moment. You scan to find, analyze to score and rank, respond to fix, validate to prove it, and report so it lives in the light. The breach hides in whichever link you skip, and Equifax skipped the follow-through with 147 million people on the line.
The number I can't unhear is 3 days. The patch was public for 3 days before attackers were inside, and the window then stayed open for months while the data drained out. Finding the flaw was never the failure. Finishing was. And here's your move tonight, for free. Open the real NVD page and the CISA KEV catalog and read one entry end to end. The day those stop looking like alphabet soup, this whole domain is yours.
And the line I tattoo for the exam is that severity is not urgency. A 7 that's on the exploited list beats a 10 nobody is touching every time. Drive your patch order with what's actually being hit, then the score, then your own exposure. Get that order right, and a 4,000 finding Monday stops being terrifying.
Next episode, we take the scanner off the leash and become the attacker, the authorized kind. Penetration testing and recon, live, with Nmap, Kali, and the reconnaissance that opens every real engagement. It's the part where you stop finding flaws and start safely proving a human can walk through them.
If this made the whole life cycle finally click, do the one thing that helps us build the rest of this free Security Plus series. Hit subscribe and like so the next person searching for this lands here instead of on another wall of slides. And the free practice quizzes for 4.3 are waiting at certs.professorerica.com, and one honest one for the comments. When you're finally running a real program, which will you actually let drive your patch order first? The CVSS, score, or the exploited list? Tell us where you land and why. This is Caroline. Thanks for watching and signing off.